Will Saunders is an amazing photojournalist and photographer, does work also in advertising. Some of the clients that he's worked with include the North Face, Merrill, Columbia Sportswear, Patagonia. He graduated from the SOJC. What year was it, Will?
2016.
2016, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome, Will Saunders.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So my first question is, there's lots of, first of all, photography as an art form is to some degree under siege in the sense that, in the journalism profession, a lot of newspapers have either let go some of their photographers and then also as the cameras become more adept at taking high imagery, there's this sense that, we just like stop a frame of a video or give everybody an iPhone on the staff and they'll somehow, So how did you decide, just in terms of the confidence in your own work, that there was a place for you out in the industry?
Yeah, that brings up a really interesting point because, the cameras are so incredible now that I even did a shoot last week and I was shooting video on my DSLR. And just as a backup, I shot it on, the new iPhone. And I looked at and reviewed the video afterwards, and the iPhone was like 10 times better. And so that, what it means to me really in this industry, and it's always meant this, like, first off, you have to be passionate and like love it like nothing else, right? And work harder than anyone. But then it really comes down to your creative vision and willing to collaborate with whoever that is, that whether it's working on a story, whether it's working on an advertising campaign, right? Because everyone can get their hand on the best gear in the world, just costs money. But the creative inside is what really stands out and is what I'm starting to even notice. And when people come to me now, they're asking like, what is your creative vision? What is your creative idea when coming into this? And it's interesting because now photographers and directors are playing a pretty heavy role in like the creative director role. Because even more I'm finding at agencies, they're either so overwhelmed or so much going on that they ask a lot of times the photographers to like give them the creative. So I think really it's coming down to the ideas you have, working with people around you and listening to their ideas and trusting them. And that's kind of how I think there's a way to stand out as far as photography and really like go after it and make it happen in the current situation.
Mm-hmm. When you first started working with some of these really incredible brands, I got to imagine that was a little intimidating.
Oh yeah, so scary. Yeah, major anxiety attacks before every like new client, that's for sure.
How do you face that? I mean, how do you, some people call it imposter syndrome, or, they're going to find out, like, I don't know what I'm doing kind of thing. But
Yeah, so for me, like imposter syndrome scares the hell out of me. I don't believe I can like figure things out in the moment. I'm definitely the type of person that wants his research, wants to be competent. Like I believe that competence is confidence with everything and anything in my life. So yeah, when I did get these new jobs, I did assist Tim Kemple, who was a professional photographer, one of my biggest inspirations. And I assisted him for 2 years straight, right out of college. And why I did that is because I wanted to have that, knowledge when going into the photo world, because the photo world's crazy. I still don't understand it when it comes to, whether it's the budgets, whether it's the contracts, there's so much. It's like the relationship between the client and everyone who's possible to be on set. So for me, I really needed to know what I was doing. And that was all about that assistance, or being Tim's assistant. It's like really understanding the industry before I put myself. It doesn't mean that I wasn't nervous and super anxious when I did get those phone calls, but I had to, meditate and be like, okay, you've assisted a guy for 2 years, watching him do the exact same thing. There's no reason you can't do that. And I did reach out to people as well, and I hired the best. My first job with the North Face, I hired Mason Trinka, who he doesn't need to be an assistant, right? He's one of the best photographers out there. But I was like, hey, Mason, I don't want to blow this. Will you be there, and get my back. And so again, I'm a huge believer in, knowledge, learning, and then also collaborating and, working with people you trust.
One of the things that you did, I think that was a unique approach, is that you and a couple of other alums, formed your own venture. So the Locals Project was a way to showcase and show what you could do. Talk about that a little bit and what the intent was.
Yeah, so we have kind of an interesting story with the Locals Project, but pretty amazing, fast track. So I was in college. I think it was my last 3 months of my senior year. I was pretty ready to get started in the world of photography. And I got a call from some alumni from the SOJC and reached out about doing a little photo trip, 2 weeks through basically documenting stories in ski towns. And of course, I hopped on it and went on this 2-week trip. At the end of it, we ended up with, I think, 4 really solid, beautiful ski stories, but more about the characters or the quirky things going on in the communities rather than, the everyday skiing or the action of the skiing. So we came back with that. We put it all together, built a website. The thing was, we had an amazing team, right? We had a filmer, we had a designer, we had a producer, and then I was shooting stills, or we had 2 filmers at the time. So amazing team. We were able to capture and get everything we needed and then also put it on a website and then started reaching out to people. And this was kind of before the Yeti storytelling was really happening. I think it was the start of it. So storytelling was starting to grow in the outdoor industry. And so they saw this and it got us really excited because people were stoked. It got a lot of people really respected what we did. So the idea came into our heads that maybe we should start a business through this. And it was interesting. That was kind of the turning point, right? We started to do this just to tell stories in the beginning. And then we got excited because we're oh, maybe we should turn this into a business. We had one really successful campaign together, which was great, really big. Everyone got hired. And then the 2 years following that, we didn't get any work. We were all getting individual freelance, smaller jobs. Mm-hmm. And so we decided that let's go back to why we started, right? We can all make money freelancing. Let's keep this core crew for storytelling. So once every, it's looking at once every 2 years now, but we were trying to hope once a year we get together, we all collaborate, come up with the story, self-fund it, and spend a month, making that happen. And it's got the photo. Yeah, it's got the photo, it's got the video, it's got the design, and it can all be hosted.
And you did this Cuba Surf project.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, that was one of the key projects. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, you've got an agent.
I do now.
And so that to handle some of the business stuff. And I want you to just talk a little bit about that move, because I think for a lot of creatives, when you reach a certain caliber, you warrant having somebody to handle the business part for you. So what's that like?
Yeah. So my agent, her name is Quitzy Nelson. It's amazing. I never thought I would have an agent. When she reached out, I was not looking for an agent, but I was working with this photo editor who ended up speaking my name to her, and she was looking for someone in the outdoor space because she didn't have someone on her roster at that moment who was in the outdoor world. So we started talking. I did some research on what an agent, was and how it works and what they do. And I went for it. I'm a firm believer, if a door opens, it's worth taking. Serendipity is amazing, especially in this career world. So I went for it and started learning, and we haven't had any big successes yet. We're still probably 9 months in together, and the state of the world, things are kind of hectic, but we've had some really big jobs come through. And the whole goal for me, that why I was okay, I'm willing to do this, is because I wanted to start diving outside of the outdoor industry. I felt like I was losing a creative fire. And so I was okay, let's try some bigger agency style jobs and see what that's like, and collaborate with some really big creative directors. And so we've had some amazing jobs come in through my agent, which was really fun. None of them, the thing is, then you go into these big bidding wars, right? And I didn't know this, but agency world has to do a triple bid. So when you get a bid, you're bidding against 2 other people, no matter what, whether they want you for sure or not. So sometimes they go on for like 9 or 10 days where you think you have this job and then you don't. And that's just a part of it. But she's there every step of the way, you know, being my biggest cheerleader, helping me with the budgets, helping me with questions. So it's been amazing. I love having her on my team. And yeah, it's something that came out of nowhere, but it's been great.
Yeah. So being a stellar photographer means capturing moments and seeing things that other people don't see. Mm-hmm. So how do you keep your sensibilities sharp? You know, and when did you, and also the other question is like, when did you first realize like, like I kind of got something here?
Yeah, it's such a funny thing that you asked that question, because I was thinking about that yesterday. This time for me, the last 3 months has given me so much self-recognition. Like I travel so much that I'm usually like, I'm obviously hiding thoughts with all my travel and work. So that was one that came up yesterday. And you know, I think what it came down to is I'm an incredibly empathetic person. And I like when I see someone, I immediately feel everything they feel. And I think it makes me very aware of the people around me. And that also means the subjects in front of my camera. And it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I also feel uncomfortable sometimes bringing a camera into someone's space because I'm so empathetic with them that I'm like, oh, am I, you know, interfering with their life? And so it's a fine balance of building the trust, which I think through my empathy, I've been able to build trust with people very, like pretty quickly, and become friends or even family with those people. And that I think is what, you know, like I said, I had this conversation with myself yesterday, and I think that's what it comes down to, is really the empathetic side and the trust building.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great anecdote. Julian, let's introduce Julian Croman, who is just graduating 2020, class of 2020, was the photo editor of Flux magazine, and I've known Julian for some time in my previous classes. Julian, say hello, and I know you have some questions for Will.
Hey Will, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Big fan of your work. Like I said, I think we've spoke before when you've come to class and Zoom.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a recent grad trying to enter this freelance, you know, photo world for the first time, I was curious, you know, what suggestions you have for recent graduates on how to maneuver the freelance world right now, given, you know, everything going on.
Yeah, right now is very tricky as far as entering the career world, but what it does give you the opportunity is to do some passion projects, right? Like everything's on hold, which means you're not getting slammed with trying to get work or getting work or dealing with productions. Right now is the time to, you know, find a person, work with some friends, collaborate, whatever it is, to work on your own passion projects. And then when this is over, you come out of it with, you know, 2 portfolio pieces that you wouldn't have had before. And a lot of what like getting hired is through these passion projects and these, you know, spec ads is what they call them, or self-funded creative ideas, because those stand out compared to, you know, like an advertising campaign, which usually has to check boxes for a client, where your stuff will be uniquely yours. So now's the time to go and, you know, come up with this idea, come up with this project and add a portfolio piece, because I don't have any work. None of my friends have any work. It's like I've been talking to everyone at marketing, you know, teams, and budgets are low. No one's doing photo shoots. So now's the time to, you know, find something that gets you excited to create. It's interesting for me right now. I'm not feeling creative at all. And I'm building motorcycles right now because I need to do something else with it's weird. I don't even ride motorcycles, but I need to do something else with my brain because I'm not feeling the fire, the creative, or whatever that is. So I think now's the time to take it for yourself wherever you feel the purpose is. Like either go do and shoot a passion project or take care of yourself. So then when we come out of this, you're fired up and you're ready to go. And I don't have the legit answer, but that's kind of where I'm trying to find myself right now.
No, definitely. And kind of touching on that, you know, if you have these passion projects, what is the relationship between editors and freelancers where, is it more give and take? Do you pitch some of these projects that you've been holding, or do you just ask them for work for certain campaigns, or you just touch on that relationship a little bit?
That you said after the passion projects?
Yeah, or if you've got something to pitch to an editor to get published, or looking for work, just how that relationship kind of manifests between you and an editor.
Yeah, for sure. So what you could do definitely after the fact or during this whole thing is, yeah, you shoot your passion project and then start reaching out to the types of companies that would want to use that, whether it's a newspaper, an editorial mag, or an actual company. And yeah, that's through reaching out through the department, or like the photo editor, or sometimes the marketing department. And that's a great way. You just got to send the email and show them your work, right? They'll know immediately if they want it or not. And don't be afraid to send, 2 or 3 emails before you hear back over the course of a month. And then after usually a month, I say, okay, they don't want it, I'll move on to someone else. As far as trying to get work with like the big campaign jobs, after all this COVID stuff is over and budgets seem to come back up, my best advice for you would be to make a list. And I do try and do this every 3 months, is like make a list of the people who I want to work with, and it changes constantly, and go in and meet with them. Like an email is never going to work. Zoom meetings now are so common that there's like, those aren't going to work as well. I think you need to go and walk in, meet the whole team, and, show face. So that's the biggest. And, it's going to cost a little bit to whether you have to drive, to the next state or fly somewhere, but make a weekend out of it. Make a list of companies, the headquarters where they are, and walk in. Because it's huge what, meeting people in person does. And you bring your portfolio to the table and bring ideas to the table, and say like, and also do research on what they've done in the past and be like, I love this. What if we did something similar on this way? Or I actually didn't like this. I think you guys messed up and you could have done this. That's always one that like sometimes is really good to do, right? You're not hurting them, but you're like, okay, this was close, but you were missing this point. And on the next project, I'd love to take you to that level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And then kind of my last question I had was, your portfolio has a wide range in work. How does your approach change depending on your assignment? If you're approaching, a North Face ad campaign opposed to one of these more feature locals projects, how does your approach change, or is it pretty constant throughout the project?
Yeah, so my approach changes quite often, and I think that's just because I need to be constantly pushed creatively. But I will say in the beginning, I picked a focus, and I think that's a big part of photography is you need to first pick like an area you want to go. So if it's a photojournalist, you are strictly shooting photojournalism work, right? Because you're starting to build a name and a style for yourself. Once you get that and dial that in and people are hiring you for that, then what you can do is start pushing the creative into other avenues. Like I tried to do I did and shoot some fashion work, right? I had never shot fashion in my life, but I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. It's kind of creative. Let's see what we can do there. Same thing with like a North Face campaign compared to a storytelling campaign. The North Face campaigns are very heavily directed, right? I'm out there. There's a whole crew behind me, and I'm telling people what to do and where to go and when to smile. Where the locals project stuff is more of a documentary style, where we're not telling people what to do. We're just following their lives. I think in your head, you need to come up with a creative approach, right? For every single shoot that you do is think about, it's the pre-production. So how are you going to shoot it? Whether it's on film or on digital, do you want it, you could be as crazy as like the entire shoot's going to be blurry. Just come up with things, right? And talk with the people who you're working with, because there's something to be said about a consistent style. And like Tim, the guy who used to assist, he always said is like, it doesn't matter if some people like it and some people do. It's like music, right? People are always going to have an opinion, but you have to be a band that sticks to it. And then from there you can adventure out. And that's when those passion projects are great, right? Because if you're like, I've always wanted to try, shooting infrared, go and do it. So.
Totally. Well, thanks so much, Will. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Always happy. And reach out to if you ever have passion project ideas, I'm always happy to help you guide.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Will. Thank you, Julian. This has been great, and we'll continue to follow your success. And thank you for taking time out to do this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. I really appreciate
All
it.
right.
It's been fun.